thanks for joining us on the Asian Le Mans Series 2019-2020 season in review. I am Nadia Nash. The Asian Le Mans Series has seen a steady growth in participation and reception from fans all over the world, promising top-notch multi-class endurance racing that always challenges the drivers and excites the fans. And of course, with the ultimate payoff, a chance to race at the 24-hour of Le Mans. Some changes to the race calendar this time around: our first visit to Australia, our first night race in Sepang, and a finale in Buriram, Thailand. And Shanghai in China was chosen as the opener for this season, and there we welcomed new teams and even new cars. Hello from Shanghai International Circuit here for the 2019-2020 Asian Le Mans Series. Are you ready for some action? Because we have returning champions here to defend their title, established and new teams, and of course, an interesting set of cars ready for battle. LMP2 will this year see the introduction of the latest generation cars, with the Ligier JS P217, the Lara P217 and the Oreca 07 Gibson doing battle. This year will also see the debut of the Oris brand in the Asian Le Mans Series. The older generation LMP2 cars, the Ligier JS P2 and Oreca 05 Nissan, are back this season fighting for the LMP2 M Trophy. In LMP3, this season will see the arrival of a new manufacturer, Norma M30s, to be raced by Nielsen Racing and Graf. In the GT class, the series sees the arrival of the new Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 and the return of the BMW M6 GT3 and Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. After Car Guy won the class last year, the Ferrari 488 GT3 is very popular. There will be 4 full season entries for the Italian manufacturer in the 2019-2020 season. So there you have it, a 26-car full season entry ahead of you, and I bet you it's going to be an exciting one. So if you want more updates, be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. With a great mix of cars, we're set for a competitive season, and first round did not disappoint. But before we get into some racing action, let's jump in the car for a hot lap around the track.
Ciao guys, I'm Max Wieser from AVM Motorsport. I'm bringing you with me for one lap around Shanghai racetrack on our M6 GT3. Here we are approaching T1, which is a part of the tricky section of the track. Go down to T2 and T3. We keep the second gear here. We try to stay as much close as we can inside. We put down the power up to third, 4 and 5th before T6. Here we have a bit of time to rest. Hard brake down to second. Here we try to put down the power as quick as we can, up to 4. This is the high speed corner. We try to stay inside as much as we can. At the exit we let the car go in the middle of track. We prepare for T8. Keep the third gear. Brake hard here, down to second. This is the double left. Apply a bit of throttle in the middle. Third at the exit. Full throttle. And we go for the very tricky corner, which is the Parabolica. Starting from here, basically on second gear, short shift to second. Try to don't go inside too early in order to have a very good exit, because later we have a very long straight. To keep the throttle open and have a very good speed at the exit, because the straight in Shanghai here is very long, and we have to prepare the next brake very well, because it's a hard brake down from 6th to 1st. This is the slowest corner in this track, and it's also tricky at the exit because from first gear the car has a lot of torque, and we go through the last corner of the track where it's easy to get track limits. Thanks to have been with us, and I hope to see you soon.
The start of the season needed no wake-up call. Competing teams showed up prepared and did not fool around. Qualifying sessions was proof of that.
We're back at the Asian Le Mans Series, and qualifying 9 of the GT3 cars in this GT class from around Asia, with just one of these cars from Europe and a great mix of fabulous cars out for a 15-minute quick-fire qualifying session. First Team AAI are back in the Asia Le Mans Series after winning the championship 2 seasons ago. The number 90 car was very much in the mix, but Hub also Corsa, locally based team here in Asia, the number 27 car with not locally based in LMP3 would go up against the Normas and a couple of extra Ligiers in the LMP3 class. The number 12 car from Ace 1 Valour Corsa was in the mix, but later on in the session it would be others that would be to the fore. Great to have though the brightly coloured number 12 car, the Italian-Japanese fusion in this championship this year. The Graf Racing car, David Drew, the number 9 car, the Norma M30 LMP3, with a wobble through the penultimate turn, was in the mix as well. Drew looking to see whether or not he could put the tricolour liveried Norma onto pole position. But at the death of the session, it would be Garrett Grist, Canadian driver, stepping over from United Autosports into the Asia Le Mans Series with rivals in Europe, Nielsen Racing, and moving over from Malaysia to a Norma chassis. He would leapfrog Nigel Moore right at the end. 34, the Inter-Europol LMP2 car lands at Matthias Besch, part of a 4-car train at the top of the standings. But Roberto Merri in the Eurasia entered 36 car, the Spanish ex-Formula 1 driver with some LMP2 experience on his CV, would come through to make the first pole position in the Gibson era in the Asian Le Mans Series, and the Ligier JS P217 it is that beat out the Orekas and the Dallara. That's what it means to Roberto Merri in his first race of 2019.
The opening grid was set, cars ready, drivers ready to take on 4 hours of Shanghai. So brace yourself for some racing action in the first race of the season.
The Shanghai International Circuit was the venue for the starting round of the 2019-2020 season, a challenging track, but well loved by drivers and teams alike. This is the 5.451 kilometer Shanghai International Circuit, featuring a massive 1.2 kilometer back straight, 16 turns with the first 3 a very tight combination to open the lap. It then winds to turn 10 when it gets faster to set up that huge straight with a tight hairpin at the end of it to head back to the start-finish line. Eurasia Motorsport clinched the first LMP2 pole for the year with Thunderhead Carlin and G-Drive Racing in 2nd and 3rd spot. ARC Bratislava sit in front of RLR M Sport in the LMP2 AM category, while in LMP3, Nielsen Racing take pole and 3rd with Inter-Europol between them. GT was led by Hub Auto Corsa on pole, with Spirit of Race and D-Station just behind them.
It was a clean start to the season in Shanghai as Aidan Reed got the pole-sitting Eurasia car safely away into turn 1, followed by Jack Manchester in the Thunderhead Carlin Racing Dallara. Moments later though, James French in the G-Drive Racing car sped past Manchester to go into 2nd place, marking a great start for the first ever Russian team in the Asian Le Mans Series. Meanwhile, Alessandro Bresson in the Ace 1 Valour Corsa made up 3 places in the LMP3 field right off the start, to move into 2nd in the category and would take the class lead later that lap. Reed was edging clear from French, with Jack Manchester in 3rd struggling for grip and coming under heavy pressure from both Jacob Schmichowski in the Inter-Europol Endurance entry and Sean Tong in the K2 Uchino Racing Orica. Tomonobu Fuji in the D-Station Racing Aston Martin was setting the early pace in the GT division, roaring up from 3rd in class at the start of the race to be 15th overall just a few laps into the race, and holding onto the tail of Rob Hodes in the Nielsen Racing LMP3 entry. Takeshi Kimura in the Car Guy entry was looking for any possible way past Maurice Chen in the Hub Auto Corsa, forcing a mistake that would allow him to take the position. However, Kimura-san was hit with a drive-through penalty for the contact that had previously occurred between the 2 Ferraris. P1 Key in the AV Motorsports BMW was pushing hard behind David Tiptoe Bantoro in the T2 Motorsports Ferrari and nearly had a chance to get past when a couple of LMP2 cars got between them. Back at the front, Reed led the number 36 into the pit stops with 44 minutes gone, allowing Sean Tong and K2 Uchino to briefly take the overall lead as the Hong Kong driver stayed out longer than most. But a lap later, James French and the G-Drive Racing Auris passed Reid in pit lane with a slightly faster pit stop and would soon take the lead after the first round of pit stops was concluded. The start of the second hour saw a tight battle for second place, with Ben Barnacote and the Dallara right behind Aidan Reid in the Ligier, with the pair around 10 seconds off the lead. Moments later, a small mistake from the Australian in turn 3 allowed Barnacote through into second, with the Briton now pushing to reel in the race leader. LMP3 leader Alessandro Bresson had built up a 37-second lead on Inter-Europol competition's Martin Hipper after a fantastic double stint by the Italian. Just 2 sets of tyres are allowed for the LMP3s, so pit stop strategy is crucial in plotting out a race win. Following a stop for Eurasia Motorsport, there was a 3-way battle for third position between cars number 34, 36 and 96, with Jacob Schmichowski in third getting lapped by the race-leading number 45 car, though Nick Foster then passed Schmichowski to take third overall. Moments later, Foster went past Ben Barnacote to get himself back onto the lead lap. Gabriele Lanciari in the number 12 Ace 1 Valour Corsa was leading in LMP3 from Martin Hipper, with Tony Wells from Nielsen Racing holding off Sebastian Page for third place in the division. There was huge drama for the FIS Team AAI car, with Johnson Chen taking a big shunt into the barrier. Fortunately, he was okay, despite terminal damage to the rear of his BMW. Take a look at the replay, and you can see in the background the BMW turning around, sliding across the track and hitting the barrier close to the marshal's post, with the parked car bringing out a full course yellow. After a full course yellow of 25 minutes, it was back to racing, with leader Jack Manchester immediately under pressure from both Leonard Hugenboom and Nick Foster, but the number 45 car did very well to retain the lead. However, just seconds before the restart, the number 12 car, the LMP3 leader, had massive problems at turn 14 before Gabriele Lanciari was forced to a dead stop halt for a full minute. Moments later, the overall top 3 places were reversed, with Eurasia's Nick Foster leaping from third to first and swapping with Jack Manchester, as the G-Drive racing car stayed in second. 2 of the Ferraris had a fierce battle in the middle order, as Alessandro Pierguidi's car clashed with Kai Cozzolino in the bright yellow car guy entry. The pair carried on for some time before the Italian Pierguidi, a class winner of the 2019 24 Hours of Le Mans race, finally managed to get by his Italian-Japanese rival. Kang Ling for ARC Bratislava was leading LMP2 AM and running in 7th position overall, but would later have some serious issues before the end of the hour and would be forced to retire at turn 15, allowing the RLR M Sport team to claim a comfortable class win. Ross Gunn in the D-Station Racing Aston Martin was running third in the GT category, but had the Lamborghini of Yuya Motojima in his sights, with Jens Klingman in the Astro Veloci Motorsports BMW a further 10 seconds down the road. Both the Inter-Europol LMP2 outfits had been hit with stop-and-go penalties, but the team's sister LMP3 car was surging to victory, with Briton Nigel Moore in the car for what would be a victorious final stint. But there was still time for plenty of action in the main LMP2 race. With 30 minutes to go, race leader Roman Rusinov missed his braking point here, allowing Ben Barnacote to go into the lead. Rusinov got himself back in the lead, the 14th lead change of the race, but Harry Ticknell in the number 45 car hauled him in over the closing stages. Seconds from the checkered flag, Ticknell picked his spot to claim what he thought would have been a debut LMP2 win anywhere for the Thunderhead Carlin team. The celebrations would be short-lived, as a post-race penalty for teammate Ben Barnacote for spending too much time on the track dropped Carlin back to third place, giving G-Drive Racing by Algarve the win, with Eurasia Motorsport in third.
To the podium, huge celebrations from G-Drive by Algarve in LMP2. RLR M Sport kick off their year with a deserved victory in LMP2 AM. It's business as usual for defending champions Inter-Europol in P3, they start with a win. And in GT, D-Station were the most reliable and snatched the first victory.
From Shanghai, we were off into uncharted territory for the Asian Le Mans Series, that is. Round 2 was held at the Ben Motorsport Park, and since it's a new venue, the drivers were open to new experiences. We're here in Australia and they're known for their cute koalas and kangaroos and of course, the very special Vegemite. And I'm down here at the pit lane trying to get some drivers to try it out. So I think I see someone who's hungry now. Let's go. Are you nervous?
Yeah, it's quite strong. Not bad. Yeah. I need about a litre of water now.
I quite like it.
And then a funny taste. It's not so bad. It's all right.
It make me wake up.
It goes in, but it's not. Yeah, no.
It tastes like battery acid.
Wow, they emptied the plate and I think we have made some new fans of Vegemite and I know what the drivers are going to have for their, tea break now. So there you go.
And for the Asian Le Mans Series first trip to Australia to the Bend Motorsport Park, it would be 3 15-minute qualifying sessions. GTs out first, and Jens Klingmann in the number 17 Aston Veloce Motorsports BMW would be in the mix. He'd finish the session third quickest. The car guy, defending champions, and the returning Com Ledegar to the team, they would be in contention too for pole position, but ultimately they'd make the front row, but not the top of the shop this time. That was because after a torrid time in Shanghai, the number 27 Hub Auto Ferrari in the hands of Ferrari factory driver Davide Rigon would put in the telling time and therefore the qualifying lap record around this Bend Motorsport Park. It would be a 2:56.109 for the 27 car, pole position for Hub Auto Corsa. It would be a bit of a disjointed LMP3 session. Quick red flag and Colin Noble there keeping cool as they got the cars underway. David Drew would be in contention for pole position in the Graf Racing number 9. Norma would have to be frustrated at the end, feeling he was balked by another car. So meant Alessandra Bressan, dominant at Shanghai, would come through to second position, but to do nothing about Colin Noble, the young Scot in the number 2 Nielsen Racing car, his first ever pole position in LMP3. Normally, the gentleman driver takes on those duties in Europe. Here, it was the Scot that took the glory. It would be a 2:50.802 for Noble and the number 2 Nielsen Racing car. Then it was time for the big guys, LMP2 and LMP2 AM. The mixed field again of the older and the newer generation. The first time that an Australian audience has got to see these cars live, and much did they enjoy it. Early session and another red flag. And then when looking like on his way to pole position, the first time of asking, Ben Barnicoat running wide in the Thunderhead Carling car. LMP2 AM, when they got back running, would go to the RLR Tour events, Orica 05 and Arjun Mani. Nick Cassidy came close but couldn't quite grab the pole position for the number 1 car, the Eurasia Racing New Zealand. That's because the pole position eventually went Thunderhead Carling. Delara would go to pole position.
This round was set to be a historic one. It was the first time we were racing in Australia and utilizing the full course of the circuit, something yet to have been done by any other series. So let's take a look back at the 4 hours of the Bend.
Round 2 saw a first ever trip for Asian Le Mans endurance racing down to South Australia at the sensational Bend Motorsport Park. 7.77 kilometers, 35 turns in 3 sectors. Sector 1 leading off the straight is short but very fast, taking us up to turn 7. Then it winds its way through sector 2, which stretches all the way to turn 25 before sector 3 offers up 2 hairpins and 3 mini straights before the start-finish line after turn 35. On the LMP2 front row in Australia, Thunderhead Carlin and Eurasia Motorsport ahead of G-Drive and Inter Europol, who also grabbed the LMP3 pole ahead of Ace 1 Villoba Corsa, Nielsen, the number 13 Inter Europol, and Graf. In GT, Hub Auto Corsa lead the way ahead of Car Guy, Astra Veloce, and T2.
Ben Barnicoat's stellar qualifying lap had put Thunderhead Carlin Racing on pole position, though it was his teammate Jack Manchester who led the field away as the Asian Le Mans Series made its race debut in Australia. Eurasia Motorsport's Daniel Gaunt got the jump from the start to go into an early lead, ahead of Manchester and James French from G-Drive Racing. RLR M Sports Arjun Maini led the LM2 AM cars in the early running, lying 6th overall and ahead of one of the newer modelled LMP2 cars. That car was John Corbett from Inter Europol Endurance, who hit the curb on the second lap, swinging wide and falling back 2 places. In the GT class, the Aston Martin Vantage of D-Station Racing shot up to 3rd in class in the early running, while in a bid for a repeat victory after claiming top honours in Shanghai. There was drama at the front with just 10 minutes gone, as Manchester in second put a wheel in the dirt but recovered well. Then, race leader Gaunt had it off, just seconds later, almost allowing Manchester to reclaim the lead, as French in third also closed up, with Eurasia's Aidan Reid and Jacob Smichowski from Inter Europol Endurance both right behind. Both the J-Lock car and the Viper Nizar Racing had some bad luck in the opening stages, with time spent in the pits for the pair after contact between them early on. Elsewhere, there was a spin for David Tipto Bantoro in the T2 Motorsports car, pushing the limits a little bit too far in his opening stint. Meanwhile, Australian Liam Talbot in the Hub Auto Corsa entry was setting a dominant pace in the GT class in his Ferrari 488, running 16th overall. Here's a replay of the Carlin car off the track. Jack Manchester ruining his previous good work and bringing out a full course yellow, which prompted some earlier than scheduled pit stops. While Martin Hipper in the Inter Europol Endurance Ligier was leading the LMP3 category, lying 10th overall. Towards the end of the first hour, there was a big spin for Anthony Lazzaro in the Rick Ware racing car. He had been running second in the LMP2 AM class and in 8th spot overall, but some contact with the number 17 BMW saw his progress falter. Entering the second hour of the race, Canada's John Ferrano went off in the RLR M Sport entry, while in second place in LMP2 AM. The car sporting colours in support of the Australian firefighters who were tackling the ongoing bushfire crisis. The number 3 Nielsen Racing entry continued its difficult weekend with a stop off track at turn 14. American Charlie Cruz behind the wheel at this particular moment. The lead number 1 car, with Daniel Gaunt still setting the pace, went off after an attempted overtake, meaning the Kiwi trio's lead was narrowed slightly, though they soon came in for a driver change, taking advantage of a yellow flag to do so. A big fire at the back of the number 59 car provided a scary moment for the RLR team, with an hour and a half gone. Fortunately, John Ferrano escaped safely from the car, though that would bring out another full course yellow. At the restart, Leonard Hugenboom in the G-Drive racing car immediately went past Eurasia's Aidan Reid to take the overall lead, with Jack Manchester's entry putting on pressure right behind, although he was a lap behind and in 4th place overall. Meanwhile, Marcus Gomes was flying in the Hub Auto entry, leading the GT class and in 13th position overall. Hugenboom started the second half of the race as he'd ended the first half, opening up a significant gap with some impressive lap times over the 7.7 kilometre circuit. But Shane van Gisbergen, in his LMP2 debut, fought back and was closing in on the leader. At one point, he tried a move and very nearly took the lead, but team strategy had him pit moments later, giving Hugenboom some welcome room to breathe. Kai Cozzolino in the GT-leading Car Guy entry was pushing hard behind the Astro Veloce Motorsports entry and got a little bit too aggressive, bumping the lapped BMW from the rear and causing a spin, which would also draw Cozzolino a drive-through penalty and allow the Hub Auto Corsa car to take over the class lead. There was a pit stop with around 90 minutes left on the clock for the Rick Ware racing entry, with 17-year-old Lithuanian Gustas Grinbergus leading the LMP2 AM category, ahead of their number 25 sister car. The final hour came down to who had more left in the tank between the Russian-based G-Drive racing entry and the competing number 1 car from Eurasia Motorsport, with an intense battle for the lead emerging between Roman Rusinov and Nick Cassidy, with a full course yellow playing out in Rusinov's favour. Incredibly, with just 7 minutes left on the clock, a heartbreaking mechanical failure saw Cassidy limping back into pit lane, giving the G-Drive racing car a clear run to the flag for back-to-back wins after victory in Shanghai, ahead of Eurasia Motorsports' Australian entry in second and Thunderhead Carlin in third overall. Rick Ware Racing took the LMP2 AM class after pole sitter RLR M Sports' dramatic fire earlier in the race ended their hopes, with reigning LMP2 AM champions ARC Bratislava rounding out the top three. In LMP3, Colin Noble and Tony Wells took the class win in the Norma M30. And in GT, the Hub Auto Corsa had looked to be on course for race victory. But an engine issue saw them lose pace and eventually finish in second, allowing Car Guy to claim the top spot, with Spirit of Race in third.
So it's back-to-back wins for G-Drive as they top the LMP2 class, with Eurasia and Thunderhead Carlin taking second and third. A 1-2 for Rickware Racing means they've all but won the LMP2 AM class. In LMP3, it was a win for Nielsen Racing, with Inter Europol behind them and Ace 1 Villorba Corsa in third, while it was a welcome win for Car Guy in GT, with Hub Auto Corsa and Spirit of Race rounding out the top three. At the podium now, G-Drive consolidate their title charge with another win in LMP2. Rickware Racing celebrate a win and the LMP2 AM title. Nielsen Racing overjoyed at their top spot in LMP3, and Car Guy back to winning ways in GT.
On to the second half of the season we go, and Sepang International Circuit was the location of choice. And there, the drivers were in for a new challenge. For the first time in the series, we'll be racing under lights. We're so happy to be returning to Sepang, Malaysia for the third round of the race. And the drivers are familiar with the track, but will things be the same driving once the sun goes down? So the Asian Le Mans Series drivers share their thoughts on driving at night.
You cannot have a darker visor because when the night comes, it's going to be too dark already. So you need to drive with a clear visor.
Trying to pick up your reference points quite difficult, and everything initially feels a little bit quicker than it actually is, but after a few laps you get used to it.
Dealing with faster cars coming past you, or you overtaking the traffic and having the headlights in your mirrors.
I think the challenges would still be the same as driving in the daytime as well.
Watch them tackle the night course as the Asian Le Mans Series has its first race under lights. More info on our social media platforms and official website. Comes into play when day turns into night during the race. So here's a sneak preview of how it looks. Ross Gunn takes us around the circuit as the sun sets in Sepang.
Hi guys, my name is Ross Gunn, driver for D-Station Racing here in the Aston Martin GT3 Vantage. We are at the Sepang International Circuit, heading down the pit straight into turn 1. Reaching just below 250 kph, braking just at the 100-meter board. Really long corner into turn 1, double apex. Try not to spin the rear tyres up too much out of 1 to have good rear stability into 2. Take a little bit of curb, use all the road on the exit, and then turn 3 is a little bit of an easy flat out corner, heading uphill to turn 4. Again, look for your braking reference just beyond 100 meters. Second gear, use the inside curb as much as possible, and then the outside curb on exit. Try and set yourself up for turn 5 straight over to the right hand side. Keep it in third gear, just a slight lift. The Aston Martin is working really well through these sort of corners. A little bit of curb in 6, out to the exit on the left. Heading into 7 and 8, really long corner. Try and make it one corner into a long arc because it's a double apex. Again, out to the exit and straight back over to the right to line yourself up for turn 9. Braking just beyond 100 again. Try and get the curb on the inside and then straight into 10. Mind the rear on the exit, and also the rear is going to be oversteering a little bit into 11. And now we're heading into some of the best corners on the track. Again, a high speed left-hander, followed by a fast right, but then we need to approach turn 14, thinking about the braking. Exit is so important out of here as we've got a long straight heading down to the last corner. A little bit of time to rest now, think about the last corner, take a drink. And then again, we're starting to now think about the braking zone. Braking just at the 100-meter border yet again. It's a bit of a strange line into here. It's a little bit off camber, so you miss the apex initially. And then squeeze the throttle on the exit, and then that is a lap of the beautiful Sepang F1 International Circuit.
I was just checking out the beast that took us around Sepang Hot Lap. But back to the race, the championship is still in contention and every point counts. So qualifying session can give us that 1 point for those taking pole position. So here is how it all went down.
So the 3 15-minute sessions saw the 6 GT3 cars, 2 of the Ferraris there leaving the pits, the Lamborghini in the background. First to the top came the Hub Auto Corsa car, the Evo version of the Ferrari 488, the 27 car in the hands of Davide Rigon. Also seeing the top of the charts, the 75 car, also now an Evo spec, the Indonesian entered T2 car in the hands of Rio Haryanto. But the end of the session saw coming to the fore Kamal Edgar in our championship leading number 7 car, defending champions, and at the moment they'd like to regard themselves as champions-elect. Marta Ferrari congratulating Kamal Edgar. Second session, this time 8 cars on track, the 8 cars of our LMP3 contingent and a growing contingent. Number 2 car in the hands of Colin Noble late into the session, trying to push the Saltire liveried Nielsen car into contention. David Drew topped the session in his number 9 tricolour coloured Graf Racing Norma M30, but he was pipped at the post initially by Gerrit Grist. In the second, the Nielsen Racing cars, the Canadian flag driver, very quick all weekend here in the rejuvenated effort from the rebuilt number 3 after their problems with the car in Australia last month. But it was the 13 car, the Inter-Europol competition Ligier JSP3, muscled around by Nigel Moore. It is a Ligier, it is the 13 car, it is Inter-Europol competition, and it is Nigel Moore taking pole position in a result that now matters more than ever for the Polish team, Polish flag team, that brings 4 cars here to the Asian Le Mans Series. That's the thumbs up from Nigel Moore as he comes home. After a delay, because of problems for a car in the previous session, we saw the LMP2 cars out on track. The 26 car, first to the fore, Harry Tinknell trying to attack as well in the number 45 car. The 34 car also in the mix with Matthias Besch at the wheel of one of the 2 Inter-Europol Ligiers. They were the early contenders. Roman Rusinov looked like he grabbed it by just 1/10 of a second from Besch until we got into the last moments of the qualifying session. 26 car though was pipped first by a surprise effort, came almost from nowhere. Sean Tong in the 96 K2 Achino Orica put the car on top by a distance, looked like he might do it, but right at the flag it was Nick Cassidy there in the foreground in the all-black Kiwi coloured Eurasia car number 1. Nick Cassidy, the emerging Kiwi superstar, he's going to be on pole position for the number 1 Eurasia Racing New Zealand Ligier JSP 217. An extraordinary end to a disjointed LMP2 qualifying session.
Racing at night was enough to add some buzz to the season, but no one was ready for what Mother Nature had in store for us. But despite all of that, teams and the drivers soldiered on to give us all an unforgettable round.
Malaysia has always been a regular destination for the Asian Le Mans family, and this year it would kick off the second half of the season as round 3. Here are the 15 turns of Sepang, totaling 5.543 kilometers. It has a tricky sector 1 that cascades down from a double apex of turns 1 and 2. It's very fast in sector 2. That takes the drivers through turns 6, 7, 8 and 9 before the final sector 3 that finishes up on the back straight and that famous hairpin at turn 15. Starting grid for Sepang, LMP2 pole for the Eurasia number 36, followed by K2 Uchino Racing in second. G-Driver in third, ahead of Inter-Europol and the 2 Rickware racing cars. Inter-Europol bagged the LMP3 pole with Nielsen and Graf behind them. Ace 1 Viloba Corsa, the number 2 Nielsen and Inter-Europol make up the class. In GT, it's Car Guy with pole, ahead of Hub Auto and Spirit of Race.
Torrential rain along with a severe lightning storm that included 3 direct strikes on the circuit moments before the scheduled start delayed the race by almost 2 hours and had the team scrambling to change their race strategies after a dry qualifying session earlier that day. Eurasia's Daniel Gaunt led the field away at the start after his teammate Nick Cassidy beat Sean Tong to pole position in the final seconds of qualifying. Puerto Rican driver Francesco Piavanetti was behind the wheel of the Spirit of Race Ferrari, lying second in the GT category, and trying to keep tabs on category leader Takeshi Kimura from the Car Guy team 1 place further ahead. Dominic Ang in the green and black Viper Nizar Racing LMP3 entry had a dicey moment in the early running, with the track still drying out, but managed to hold his line and not concede too much ground. James French in the G-Drive Racing entry had started in 3rd overall, but lost a couple of spots in the early running and was here passed by Daniel Frost from Inter-Europol competition to fall back to 6th place. Tomonobu Fuji in the D-Station Aston Martin Vantage had taken the lead in GT, but was being hotly pursued by Liam Talbot in the Hub Auto Ferrari, the pair starting 4th and 3rd in the GT category respectively. Daniel Gaunt and Sean Tong were still battling for the overall lead at the front, with Nick Foster in another Eurasia entry, the number 36, a further 3 seconds behind, with Thunderhead Carlin's Jack Manchester in 4th. Talbot was on fire and continued to push Fuji for the GT lead, with the pair coming together here as the Australian surged from the back. But it was only a matter of time until Talbot would get past his rival and open up a nice gap at the front of the GT class. Rory Pensonen in the Graf car, a new addition to the grid in Sepang, would go to the front in what was becoming a very fluid LMP3 class, running 8th overall, having started way down in 17th on the grid. James French in the championship-leading number 26 car had a big spin and then was forced to drive through the gravel as he re-entered the track. As the sun was setting, the number 65 was delayed by a mandatory pit stop due to problems with the sidelights, losing a few laps after a fantastic start. But as Dominic Ang handed over to Douglas Koo, they plummeted back down the order from 1st to last, putting the number 3 pole sitter Nielsen back into the class lead, although Ang would later recover. With others in the GT class having some issues, Yasuku Shibata in the J-Lock Lamborghini made his way into the lead in the 2nd hour, while lying 11th overall. The Rick Ware racing car was looking to clinch the overall title for LMP2 AM in Sepang, but it was their sister entry with Anthony Lazzaro behind the wheel that was making headway in the division, running 13th overall at this point. The number 26 and number 8 cars got into big trouble at turn 9, with a hit from behind by Rory Pensonen. The T2 Motorsports car did very well to avoid a major collision, but was delayed significantly after being forced to come to a stop on track. Eurasia Motorsports' Robert Mahiri in the race-leading number 36 car was lapping brilliantly at the head of the field, leading the race into the second half and taking advantage of the misfortune that had earlier happened. Viper Nizar's Douglas Koo had more misfortune on the tricky turn 9, stuck out in the sodden grass while leading the LMP3 category. And with Philippe Milacek also off at turn 14, there was a full course yellow, with several cars using the opportunity to come in for a pit stop. A longer than anticipated stop for the K2 Uchino car in the 3rd hour of the race saw the Japanese outfit slip out of the podium positions, as James Winslow in the Inter-Europol endurance car passed them for 3rd in LMP2. Great action in the LMP3 category here, with the Inter-Europol competition car unlapping itself from the Ace1 Valoba Corsa entry after this passing move in midfield. Stints from David Rigon and Marcus Gomes in the Hub Auto Ferrari had the team at the top of the GT field, but was still battling for top honours with the J-Lock team. Meanwhile, Ben Barnicoat in the Thunderhead Carlin car took the overall lead from the number 6 Eurasia as the British team looked for the win, while Eurasia would end the hour in trouble in the pits. Gustav Grinbergus was having a solid run in the Rick Ware racing car in LMP2 AM and heading towards the championship, plus a Le Mans 24 Hours Auto entry. Due to the first night race of the season, several cars had issues keeping the number panel on the side of the car lit throughout, with the number 34 car forced in for repairs to address the problem. Nigel Moore was in an absolute charge in the LMP3 division, dragging his Inter-Europol competition entry back into podium contention, despite water in the electrics costing them 3 laps at the start of the race. The number 75 Ferrari was another car delayed by the same problem, with a dual threat of heat and humidity throwing up some extra obstacles in Sepang. Further ahead, Rob Hodes in the Nielsen Racing Norma was defending a lead in LMP3, but David Drew in the Graf car stormed into the division lead. The main drama in the final hour involved the race leaders. Earlier, the Eurasia entry had taken full advantage of a full course yellow to get their final pit stop in, with Aidan Reid clear of Harry Ticknell and the Thunderhead Carlin team. but after being called into the pits for a rear light issue, the team left the stop too late and crossed the line with a 25-second lead. However, a 36-second penalty post-race meant that Jack Manchester claimed eventual victory, with championship leaders G-Drive Racing by Algarve in third.
Look at the smiles from Thunderhead Carlin. They needed the win and got it in LMP2. Rickware Racing just needed to finish in LMP2 AM, and they did. Graph Racing with a solid victory in LMP3, and it's a first ever win for J-Lock in GT, and that keeps the title open and into the final round.
The final round of the season was set in Buriram, Thailand, and as the end draws closer, so does the allure of its prize, racing at 24 Hour of Le Mans. Those still in contention for the championship were in it to win it. The final round is here and we're in Buriram, Thailand. We are ready to crown our champion who is guaranteed that invitation to 24 Hour of Le Mans. So let's find out from the drivers themselves what that win means to them.
We were first, we were last, and we were everywhere in between there, but eventually we came out on top, and it gave us a great chance to fight for the championship this weekend.
The same goal as we've set out within the team and to win the entry.
Our team owners look for participating in Le Mans 24 Hours. We have to win the race to win the championship.
I visited Le Mans last year. That's one of my biggest ambitions, to race at Le Mans.
Never been there, of course. We need to win the championship first.
I hope I can be there, and I hope you see you there as well.
I'll put in a good word for you.
All there is left to do is for the drivers to give it their all and cross that finish line. 4 Hours of Buriram is live on Sunday, so see you there. The apex was in sight. 4 Hours of Buriram had drama, suspense written all over it. So for one last time this season, the drivers took on the qualifying session.
Well, the 6 GT cars, all in the championship hunt, they streamed out for what we expected to be a really tight battle. Car Guy, though, stumbled at the start with a couple of track limits issues. The 51 car in the hands of new Ferrari factory driver Daniel Serra pushed hard, was in the mix, but ultimately had no answer to the pace of Tim Slade in the number 27 Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari. The Aussie Supercars star put it right in the mix, but the story of the day for many will be the emergence for a pole position, a first pole position in the Asian Le Mans Series for an Indonesian team, Rio Haryanto in the number 75 T2 Motorsports car. They were rightly delighted with that. Are they an emerging force? LMP3, 8 cars, 4 in the hunt, 2 very much in the hunt, but it was Norma's day today. 4 of the 8, Norma chassis, the other 4 the Ligiers, and it was the Normas that really had the pace. The number 8 car in the mix to start with. David Drew looked like he might have an answer to the pole position conundrum, but ultimately slid back into third. That was because coming up into second position on the front row, Garrett Grist, the Canadian flag driver in the number 3 car for Nielsen Racing. That would be, well, the cherry on top of a great day for Nielsen Racing. 1-2 in the order, and that was thanks to a dominant performance ultimately from an emerging force in sports car racing. Young Scot Colin Noble absolutely bossed it for Nielsen Racing. It'll be a 1-2 for Norma, it'll be a 1-2 for Nielsen Racing tomorrow, 4 Hours at Buriram in LMP3. Then we got into the dogfight we expected for LMP2, and with the LMP2 cars out there, it turned out to be 2 top dogs scrapping it out. The first of them, Kiwi Nick Cassidy, as Guy Cosmo put the 25 car for Rickware Racing on top in LMP2 AM. That was settled early on. All eyes then were on what's going to happen for the overall pole position. Matthias Besch tried to have a bit of say in that in the Enter Europol car. That wasn't going to quite work out. Cassidy just edged away a little in the number 1 car in the Kiwi colours. But Ben Barnicoat was soon in the mix, and Barnicoat had his tail up. If there was going to be a dogfight, he was going to be the one with the sharpest teeth. The Dallara, the 45 car for Thunderhead and Carlin, would set the pole position in excellent fashion. That sets up a fantastic battle for the overall championship tomorrow. Don't miss it, because it's going to be a blinder. That's a happy, happy man and a happy team.
3 races done and dusted, only one thing left to do. Let's get straight into it. The electrifying finale we've been waiting for the entire season.
to the grand finale for the 2019-2020 season, and it's back to Thailand and beautiful Buriram. This is the track at Buriram, 12 turns in 3 sectors of just over 1 kilometer each, totaling 4.554 kilometers. It's a very flat track, but also very fast. A long straight after the start, then challenging turns from 4 to 10 between sector 2 and 3, before a sharp right-hander at 12 to complete the lap. Thunderhead Carlin snatched the pole in LMP2 at Buriram after a blistering qualifying performance, just ahead of the 2 Eurasia P2s and K2 Uchino Racing. In LMP3, it's a Nielsen front row with the number 2 ahead of the number 3. The number 52 Rick Ware racing car has the LMP2 AM pole, while in GT it's a first ever pole for T2 Motorsports ahead of Hub Auto and Spirit of Race.
The last race of the season saw Jack Manchester defend his line well at the start as the 23-car grid got underway in Thailand, with Roberto Merri in the Eurasia entry moving up from 3rd to 2nd. Sean Tong in the K2 Uchino racing car moved up 2 spots into 3rd, with the championship-leading G-Drive Racing by Algarve car in 4th. A season's worth of bad luck continued for the other Eurasia entry, with Yamanaka dropping down from 2nd to 8th in the early running, unfortunately undoing the great work done by Kiwi teammate Nick Cassidy in qualifying the day before. Manchester was slowly extending his lead lap by lap as the race progressed, with Spaniard Mahiri desperate to get past Sean Tong for 2nd place and make a push for the lead. Alessandro Bresson in the Ace Velour Corsa car was leading the LMP3 category, up into 10th overall from 15th at the start, ahead of Dominic Ang from Viper Nizo Racing, who had also picked up 5 spots and was determined not to let Bresson get away. Sean Tong closed the gap to race leader Jack Manchester, with Merri, James French and Daniel Frost all close behind. Daniel Serra in the Spirit of Race Ferrari was leading the GT class, with all 6 entries still in championship contention, but the Ferrari factory driver was still not able to drop the chasing pack, with Liam Talbot's Hub Auto car next in line. In fact, Talbot was being hotly pursued by Tomonobu Fuji in the D-Station Racing Aston Martin, and by Yuya Motojima in the J-Lock Lamborghini, with the trio neck and neck after more than half an hour of racing. Fuji-san then pounced on a Talbot mistake to move past the Australian, with Motojima also going through and immediately having a crack at his countryman, but to no avail. There was a scary moment for race leader Jack Manchester as the leaders came up to lap Neil Muston's car. Manchester had to go around the outside of the LMP3, almost allowing Sean Tong to pass him as he went down the inside of Muston, but the Briton held firm at the front. In a rapid pit stop, Manchester came in to hand over to Harry Ticknell, picking up some significant seconds over the K2 Uchino team on the changeover. In fact, after the first round of pit stops had been completed, it was James French in the G-Drive Auris who had climbed up into 2nd position, with Roberto Merri and Sean Tong in 3rd and 4th. Shortly past the hour mark, Satoshi Hoshino brought the Aston Martin into the pits, spelling a disappointing end for the D-Station Racing team that had opened up the season with a win in Shanghai. In LMP3, Greek driver Andreas Leskaratos had nearly a 1-minute lead in the category from Graf's Matthias Kaiser and Viper Nizo Racing team boss Douglas Koo. Turn 3 here had the feel of lap 1, with a half a dozen cars jammed together 90 minutes into the race, with several of the GT cars in the thick of the action. Martin Hipper in the Inter-Europol competition Ligier started to plummet down the leaderboard, and this was the reason. The drama brought a full course yellow and opened the LMP3 championship right back up. Meanwhile, a spin for Cody Ware in the Rick Ware Racing LMP2 AM car added to the action as the cars were brought under flags. The number 13 car made its way back to the pits to fix its gearbox issue, with even co-driver Nigel Moore pitching in with his mechanical skills in a desperate bid to salvage the team's title hopes. With Leonard Hugenboom in the number 26 pressing Jack Manchester hard for the lead, disaster struck Sebastian Page's car as both went past him, the Frenchman trying to avoid the leaders by going wide but unable to rejoin safely. Into the 3rd hour, and the number 27 car overhauled its GT rival, the Spirit of Race entry, Marcus Gomes passing Oz Negri, who had just started his stint in the car. Gomes continued to open up a gap with some rapid lap times, including the fastest of the race, but the GT title was still very much up for grabs. Meanwhile, in the LMP2 division, Jamie Winslow had put the Inter-Europol Endurance Ligier in second place, behind the G-Drive entry, but ahead of Thunderhead Carlin and Eurasia, really mixing up the championship point standings. Aidan Reid in the fourth place Eurasia car then went a lap down to race leader Leonard Hugenboom. Watch closely at the top of the screen as the Inter-Europol car, back on track after a long stoppage, spins off at turn 1. Ben Barnicoat was now behind the wheel of the number 45 car and was pushing hard for second place, trying to find a way around Jacob Schmichowski, who had just taken over from teammate Jamie Winslow. The Eurasia Motorsport car had a strong start from Roberto Meri, but as the stakes got higher in the final hour, the added pressure perhaps got to Nick Foster, who ended up in the gravel at turn 3, ending the team's day and their title chances. That left Carlin's Ben Barnicoat and G-Drive's Roman Rusinov to battle it out over the final stretch, with the pair exchanging places here amid mild contact between them. Barnicoat tried to have another crack just a moment later on the same lap, but ended up going across a curb and onto the grass, losing some traction. With the pair entering traffic, Barnicoat had another opportunity, and while the Russian initially held him off, the Briton did eventually manage to grab the lead and keep it during a pulsating few laps. The final round of pit stops saw no change in the order, meaning Ben Barnicoat was the man to take the checkered flag for Thunderhead Carlin, giving the team its second straight win. But Rusinov's second place in Buriram gave the overall title to G-Drive by Algarve Racing by just a single point. K2 Uchino Racing finished third for its first podium finish of the season. The Ace 1 Valoba Corsa Ligier won the LMP3 class, but a second place finish was enough to clinch the title for Nielsen Racing with Graf in third. And in GT, Hub Auto Corsa took both the race victory and the class championship, with Car Guy in second and Spirit of Race in third.
A win for Thunderhead, but the title still goes to G-Drive Racing by Algarve, along with that LMP2 invite to Le Mans. To the podium now, and it's back-to-back wins for Thunderhead Carlin, though it wasn't enough to crown them champions. Brickware Racing happy to make their LMP2 AM title official with another finish. In LMP3, it's all smiles for Ace 1 Valoba Corsa as they take a first win, and Hub Auto Corsa get the deserved trophy in GT after fending off all their rivals. So G-Drive Racing by Algarve take the LMP2 title after a solid performance all season that included 2 wins and 4 podiums. Brickware Racing are crowned LMP2 AM champions after overcoming struggles at the start of the season. Nielsen Racing have the LMP3 title with some flawless driving in the second half of the season. And in GT, it's Hub Auto Corsa that will be heading to Le Mans, coming through a tough 6-car fight that went down to the last day.
A season of the Asian Le Mans Series is always action-packed and full of suspense, but this one was decorated with so much more. A flying start in Shanghai, and then our first race at the Bend, followed by another first for the series, the night race in Sepang, and concluding it all in Buriram, Thailand. And we couldn't have done it without the support from our partners, participating teams and organizers, and of course not forgetting each and every one of you who have been with us every step of the way. So thank you so much for joining us on this adventure, and surely there's more to come. So we'd hope to see you again in the next season of the Asian Le Mans Series. Till then, goodbye.